When you first learned Greek, you were giving a basic kind of default translation. With the genitive, you said of, for example. And one of the things that all students of Greek have to learn is that while that default translation of works in many cases, there are times it's not going to work. And you have to develop a sensitivity to when, in fact, that of translation doesn't work. This is like participles with ing. Usually ing will work, but you'll hit participles where ing just doesn't work. And that's why you have the advanced categories in Greek for the rest of us to help you understand some of the different uses of the cases and whatnot. But in this case, we're going to look at, no pun intended, in this case, we're going to look at use of the genitive. That's pretty important. In 2 Corinthians 5:5, it's but the one who prepared us into this same, and prepared us for this very thing, God. Okay, in other words, you have to assume a me in there, that's fine. The one who prepared us for this very thing is God. Then you have a substantival participle. The one who gave to us the arabona of the Spirit. Well, if you look at the different translations, you can see this is an interesting word. It can mean pledge, and over in the NASB they give you a footnote or first installment. That's why the CSB has down payment, ESV has guarantee, as does the NRSV. The NIV has as a deposit guaranteeing what is to come, the Net Bible payment, or first installment, pledge, or deposit. And the NLT, a guarantee. So it's a pretty rich word. What I like to remind people of is in modern Greek, and you can't read this back into biblical Greek, but in modern Greek, this is your engagement ring. So it's the down payment, it's the pledge, assuming a biblical view of engagements, that it's the engagements that's the binding thing. But anyway, so that's why you have all these different translations. But what I wanted to emphasize was the pledge of the Spirit. Well, what do you mean, pledge of the Spirit? Does that mean anything? I mean, in your mind, you're probably processing that it's the pledge which is the Spirit. In other words, the Holy Spirit is the pledge, the down payment, the guarantee of God's work in our life. That's why the translations all invert the order, well, except for the NLT, that they put pneumatos first, who gave us the Spirit as a pledge. Well, before you can just say, well, that must be what it means, you have to be able to look and see if that usage is a category in Greek. And again, that's why the advanced sections in Greek for the rest of us are so important. And this is in the section 16.21 called a genitive of apposition. I know this is a little complicated, but that's why I wanted to give you another illustration of a genitive apposition. There's the two uses of an appositional construction. The first is what's called a simple apposition. I'm just going to read this. The head noun and the word in the genitive are roughly equivalent, and both words have to be in the genitive. So if this were a simple apposition, first of all, arabona would have to be in the genitive, which is not. It's accusative here. And it would have to mean that the arabone and the pneuma are the same thing, which they're not. So that lets you know, and again, this is how when you start saying, well, when does the default translation not work? Well, it doesn't work when it doesn't make a lot of sense. To say that the arabone and the Spirit are the same thing doesn't make sense. So you go to the second category, which is called a genitive of apposition. In this case, the head noun, arabona, represents a larger group, often ambiguous, and it is, well, a pledge. Well, what kind of pledge? There's lots of kinds of pledges. There's lots of kinds of guarantees. While the genitive is a smaller, perhaps more specific part of the larger group. And in this case, the head noun, arabona, does not have to be in the genitive. So what it's saying is that the God gave us a pledge, and that pledge, more closely defined, more specifically defined, is the Holy Spirit. And that's why you almost always have words like as inserted. I was a little surprised that NASB doesn't italicize as, because there is no Greek word as, and this is the problem of trusting the italics in the NASB, that they don't always italicize words that are technically don't have a word for word equivalence in the Greek. But anyway, it's a spirit as a pledge, spirit as a down payment, spirit as a guarantee, or the spirit as a deposit. Well, what's a deposit? It's one who guarantees what is to come. The NIV is trying to get the fuller meaning of the word there. Spirit as a down payment. So that's why those advanced categories in Greek for the rest of us are so important, because while the normal uses handle most of the occurrences, you'll come across things like this where it just doesn't quite make sense. And get that laminate sheet and look at it and go through the scan of the options, understanding, of course, that I only gave you the main alternate uses of the cases and participles and whatnot. If you want to know all of them, you have to pick up Dan Wallace's grammar. So anyway, I hope that helps.